I'm so excited to welcome onto the first time facilitator podcast, Peter Hopwood. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. I am literally delighted to be here. I've been following you for a while. Not following you, just kind of seeing your stuff and seeing what unfolds, and always great value, always good stuff that you're sharing. And it's really kind of cool to finally be with you now on the podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've been seeing your stuff on LinkedIn and the work that you're doing now, pivoting all your stuff. Pivoting, there's that word again, into virtual. But before we dive into your tips and what you're helping other people with in terms of their presentation skills and building trust, what's your story, Peter? Like, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, I'll kind of condense it and squeeze it right down as best I can. It's something like 25 years ago, after my studies, my art college studies. I decided to start traveling. I left and I went to live in Paris, in the south of France, and that just kept going. And started to work in hospitality for a big tour operator for British tourists, going on holiday and enjoying the resort. And I literally worked at the airports, I worked at the hotels, and a lot of that job is literally trying to convince, perhaps persuade holidaymakers of the things they can do while they're there, their experiences. So the trips, the different fun things they can get up to while they're on holiday, that experience. So I'm trying to help them enjoy that experience more, to naturally help me enjoy the experience of the commission more from the trips that I was selling. So very simply, the more I would sell, the more I would gain. And a lot of that was presenting the resort, presenting it in a very formal way on a stage in front of 150 people, 200 people, 4 times a week, the same presentation day, week in, week out, 4 times a week. So when you do something a lot and you do it on a regular basis, your confidence grows. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that you're doing it right, as we can see with Zoom on virtual exchanges. So I realized very quickly on that, by changing things, by changing the way perhaps I approached how I felt about the particular product or service I was sharing, or how I moved, how I sounded, my voice, the way my gestures were at a certain time during the presentation, all this actually mattered, because it actually changed the way perhaps somebody perceived me, felt about the content. And so I kind of grew this talent. Years went by. My final placement was in Croatia. So at the time, it was just like 2 pages in a brochure, very, very small. I decided, I'd love to go there. And not many people knew about it. I went there, continued doing the job I'm doing. I met somebody, got married to that person, had a few kids. And 21 years later, I'm still in not the same place, not the same town, a different town, same country, same beautiful country, and develop that skill of sharing ideas to help people with their impact and how they can speak. So literally right now, as a TEDx coach, as a speaker coach, as a global MC, kind of doing on stage the things that I preach about, the things that I help other people to do in terms of getting their message across, and having much more connection, not just on the stage, but over the last year or so, or just under a year, really, really focusing on getting really good at this virtual experience we've all been pushed into.
We have been pushed into it, and I love that you've adapted a lot of what you've done. I've got to ask you a question. Like, when you were presenting the same presentation over and over again, how did you make it fun and fresh for yourself? Or was it like Groundhog Day? Like, were you using it to experiment? You said you were getting better.
Well,
and,
yeah, good question. Really, that's an interesting thought, actually, notion. So at the beginning, I didn't change it. I just carried on, because why bother? Why change it if it seems to be working? When I actually went to a different resort or a different country, so over the course of 5, 6, 7 years, I think it was that 6 countries. Sorry, I lived in different resorts. They're all very, very different. They're different in terms of the people that go there, the holiday makers, they're different in terms of the feel of the things you can get up to, the things that you can discover and explore. So there's different moods and different tones. So you can't, you know, I realized by taking the same kind of method and the same feel and the same energy from one resort to the next in the presentation, it didn't work. Because sometimes I would do really well in a resort, and admittedly, other places were you know, dreadful, a dramatic change, because I didn't change the way I was doing things. Once that kind of hit me, from then on, I realized, you know, I've got to really think about really what I'm saying here, how I feel about all of this, and the perception. Really think about that perception people have of me, whether they want to hear more, whether they kind of like me and think, yeah, this guy seems honest, this guy seems like someone I could, you know, I could listen to, and then eventually maybe buy something from him, or just simply, yeah, it's worth sticking around emotionally in my head to what he has to say. So yeah, I learned the hard way and realized you have to start changing things according to many different factors. As I said, mood, energy, feel, and that's the same with what you do, isn't it? Same with what you do, same with what most of everybody who's listening to this as a facilitator, really listening, isn't it? I think that's the biggest
really,
skill.
yeah, and as you say,
listening to what's happening around you and what people want and expect, and the energy and the mood. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that, because I recently we're lucky in Queensland, we can do a little bit of traveling within our own state. So we went to this tropical island and we got the ferry over, and there was the guy was giving the safety briefing, and it was the most entertaining safety briefing I've ever seen. Like, we're all laughing, and I thought, you know, this ferry goes every day. Like, he must have delivered that 150 times, but it was like it was the first time when he said it. Like, it was just seemed really, really fresh. So I'm wondering if he was really listening out to what was going on, and I don't know.
He probably realizes, as you're telling me that, I think he probably realizes that he has to make it different. He had to get people engaged. As soon as you sound like you're reading, or it's just something that you've done a million times, I think actually people can feel that, and they can hear that, and they can sense that, can't they? So it's like telling yourself, okay, this is the first time. Let's do this as if it's the first time. And I think that's the key for all of our presentations, especially if we've practiced it many times. So working with TEDx speakers, there's a lot of practice in there. There's a lot of because of it's high stakes. In our minds, it's quite high stakes, and they want to get it right because it's a moment. It's like one moment in time that is going to count, hopefully. It's going to go global anyway. Hopefully, well, it will be on the website. It's global. Yes. So there's a lot of practice. So practice, really getting it right. Really, even more than you think, more than the speaker feels they maybe need to. And I just keep pushing them, because naturally, the more they get it right, the more it feels right. But I always say, you know, when you get there, when you're actually doing it, it has to feel like it's the first time for them, and it's the first time for you. And if you can get closer to that notion, I think you're on the right path, and people can feel that. Because again, it reminds me of on flights, right? So stewardesses or air hostesses, or stewards as they're called now, stewardesses, when they have their short thing they have to say, you know, maybe about the safety announcement or any announcement at all. Often, for me, it does sound like it is a script, because often they've got a piece of paper and they're reading off it. But still, regardless of that, I still feel like they've done this 1 million times, and that I'm just another passenger. I'm just another sheep on board, and you know, these are the messages that are coming through. So I think, definitely trying to say to yourself, you know, this is the first time they're going to hear it, and I have to make sure I feel the same.
Yeah, well, you're on the right show, first time facilitator. And the amount of rehearsal, one of my favorite quotes from Seinfeld is like, you've got to practice it so much that if someone's punching you in the face, you can still deliver the punchline.
Great, Fred, great.
I think I paraphrased it, so make sure you Google the correct phrase. Hey, I'm really curious around the combination of what you do, so speaking as well, and the entertainment side of that, the presentation side, and the world of facilitation. But I think that where it kind of meets in the middle, obviously both skills are complementary to each other. But when it comes to being an MC and hosting, what you're doing is it's a bit about, excitement, that charisma and the way that you talk around people, but also bringing in the group and a bit of interaction. What's your experience been in moderating? What makes a great moderator, a great host?
Yeah, so I think certainly, so before all of this, before we went and kind of in a virtual setting, already as an MC, as a host, as a moderator, at events, it can be quite difficult because you're trying to get the best out of your panels, or the best out of the people coming on stage, and that whole interaction, you're trying your best to keep that together and make it feel right and look right. And that's quite difficult sometimes because you got a whole bunch of different people with different ideas and different things they want to share. Maybe sometimes they have their own agenda, which can come into it as well, where they want to, just one example of that is saying more. So, really speaking more, taking more time than they need to in terms of the share, in terms of the percentage of how much time they get speaking, right? So coming online, it's a lot more difficult. It's really difficult because the skills and the mini skill set that we've kind of had to adapt to. And if you do it well, you can engage really well. You can build up that trust. You can build up that connection. But most of us, what I've noticed is most of us find that a challenge. So bringing together a group of people and bringing them online can be quite challenging. So there are a few things that we can do to try to reduce that and try to boost up that connection and engagement. So one of those things is like the preparation beforehand. We'd always do that anyway, but actually getting on a call with them, before it would maybe be a set of emails, maybe a call, or maybe even a phone call perhaps, or perhaps a Skype call. Here, if it's virtual, really get on board, really get to them and talk to them and have an exchange with them virtually. And through that, you can start kind of just simply sharing ideas. Excuse me.
You're right.
Through that, you can kind of share ideas on really how to share your messages. So you can say, listen, so can I just ask, this is the screen, this is what people will see, is that right? And then they would say yes or no. And then maybe I'll give them some tips, perhaps how to stand, how to look. So we're all looking, so we're all synced. We're all looking at the camera. We've all got the right lighting. We kind of figure out, who's going to say what, and make really trying to make them feel comfortable before they get there. So the more times they're familiar with me, let's say, or familiar with the content, or familiar with the setup, that will make them, we can do that twice, maybe 3 times. It may sound a lot, but I tell you again, that's the practice part of preparation, getting them ready, getting our panelists ready for the time when the pressure's on. And if it's a live event, certainly that can happen.
I was a panelist recently. I had a lot of fun, and I'd only met the panelists for the first time when we were on this live call, and I kind of knew who they were, and there was a bit of email correspondence. And because I love sharing I've got a podcast for a reason. I love sharing my ideas. So anytime there was a pause, I'd want to just jump in. And then I was also very mindful of stepping back because I'd spoken too much. And how much of that, do you let your panelists kind of self-facilitate versus you then jumping in? Will you ever interrupt or try to move things along?
It really does depend on that kind of emotional energy, that emotional temperature that is already there. And hopefully I can help to create that at the beginning. Okay. So letting people, again, the notion of really listening and just standing back, but really listening to the moments where it's right to jump in. Because sometimes, again, as you know, you can stop and wait and listen and let that pause happen and wait for others who are thinking, or somebody that could, think, and then you can, and it's actually online. It's, if you've got on the gallery view and you can see everybody, and if you're really looking, you can actually identify just before they speak, or just as they're, even when they're thinking, you can see that. And you can see someone who's just about to share something, or just about, he's just about to get a question. You can actually see the breath go in, and you can see maybe a movement, and then you can almost, the eyebrows might go up instinctively, and then you can say, okay, maybe I can see maybe John seems to be John. Have you got something to say, or something like that?
You're right.
Have you noticed that?
Well, I know that, in this panelist session, I was the one that was like, kind of reacting. And then the facilitator would go, hey, Leanne, I think you've got something to add to that. And I was like, yeah, that was so I kind of made it very obvious. I don't have a poker face at all. So that made it easy.
That's really difficult. In fact, sometimes panelists are not showing any signals. And that's one thing, again, during those kind of prep meetings, just to say, listen, online, everything we do, we kind of have to kind of amplify slightly to share signals. Our non-verbals, our body language, we have to kind of amplify those. So really show me, if anything, show me and the audience that that you've got something to say, that you want to share it, the emotion that you've got behind it, regardless of where it is, whether it's strong, whether it's weak, or whatever, the meaning behind it. Show us. Show us, because we want to see that, and we want to hear that, and we want to feel it. Because sometimes people are simply, they have great things to say. They have great content. That the ideas are wonderful. But the way they deliver it, the way it comes across, perhaps through the sound of the voice, or perhaps often in the facial expressions, can be very unengaging. And people's, even though I might have met them 2 or 3 times beforehand online in a few Zoom calls, so I'm familiar with them. For the very first time, for an audience member, they will make that snap judgment about them, snap judgment about who they are, more so before they start and as they start, rather than at the end when we're finished and they've got a kind of an overview of everything.
Yeah. And I think that it makes it like that bias then to then just move to the very reactive person that's showing a lot of emotion and quick to respond. Like that can work. And as a panelist, it works in my favor, because I am that type of person that's easy to go to, as opposed to someone that is a bit more thoughtful, because I just speak my ideas, but someone that is a bit more measured and thoughtful, that might sit back. And then I guess it's being careful in how you engage them and making sure that microphone
I mean, a thoughtful, someone who's thoughtful is great, is really good. But
really good.
That person could just be aware that he or she has to show maybe slightly more on this screen, and just a simple way of saying, listen, your ideas are great, but through the screen it's really difficult to get that across. So if I could ask everyone just to be more aware of maybe just pump up a little bit, maybe pump up's not the right word, just increase, there we are, increase those gestures, increase the facial expressions, feel what you're saying. And that already they'll be thinking, okay, maybe he's right. Maybe that could be a good idea.
That's awesome. I love that you're putting that into the prep. I never even thought of doing that, because that's the signal I'm looking for. Absolutely. Even in person, right? You just sort of waiting, and it's easier to sense that. I think you said emotional temperature. I love that. Great phrase. So Peter, in terms of, I've got a question for you as well. In facilitation, we're all about our groups, like being the heroes of the story, we're the guide. Again, speaking is really, you can be a bit of the hero. I don't know, between the two. In terms of moderation, I found I'm not, I facilitate more than I moderate and host events. But when I'm in that host seat, I feel like, oh, I've got to really ramp up my charisma, my bravado, because this is an event that I can sort of dictate what the energy looks like. What do you think about that? Like, when you are introducing a panel or you're the MC introducing various speakers, do you think that you're also part of that show? And then do you have to, I don't know if I'm phrasing that really well, but it's just a different type of feel that I have.
I got it.
Yeah,
I think so. Okay. So if we rewind a little bit, so that the whole point of an event, and having an MC and having, all the content that you have, really it's finding out, to start off with, from the event organizer, what he or she is after. What do they want from this? What's the objective? What is it to, share really kind of thoughtful, mindful content that is, they'll go away and after it, they've got lots and lots of great ideas, and it's really thoughtful, and maybe not so much energy. Sometimes events, and depending on the sector, depending on the location as well, it all depends.
Yes.
But sometimes it's the other way around, where it's simply about creating a fun, enjoyable, happy, positive, productive kind of environment. Maybe and this often happens with working with, let's say, companies who are bringing all of their employees together, all their staff together for a conference or an event. Okay, this was before COVID hit, but I'm sure it will come back again. But even online, bringing everybody together is a good thing. And often what they are looking for is that sense of community, that sense of fun, that sense of being in the right place. I'm working for the right company, and this is going to be great. And sometimes as an MC, that's what they're looking for. And some MCs are specifically really, really good at that. Others are more towards, really facilitating and moderating those panel discussions that really get the most out of the content that's shared, and the most out of the panelists as well. Really being that person who's really putting everything together to really make people understand quicker, and understand maybe in a more easy way everything that's gone on. So almost like an overview after each of the speakers, or maybe a half day, or towards the end of the first day, just kind of a nice wrap up towards the end of the second day, giving a real summary of what's happened, so people can kind of making sense of what's going on. Because an event, whether it's online or in person, that's a lot of information, isn't it? It's a lot of data, it's a lot of stuff to take in. And the MC can often be that person who just kind of says a few sentences that just helps people make sense of what's going on. Or maybe be that person who's kind of the voice of the audience, because you're on this, it's not about sides, but it's about representing the audience online, representing the speakers that are coming out, and representing the event organizer as well. So I think it is about really identifying what the objective is, in terms of, an MC who's entertaining, or an MC who's kind of, part of the show. My job is simply to really get people to think and get them ready emotionally for what's to come. When it's finished, I then get them to kind of figure out and make sense of what's happened. And then getting them ready emotionally, feeling good, getting them to on the same wavelength, getting them to think, along the same lines, ready for the next speaker. Because you can have a speaker who's, full of energy, full of ideas, maybe more on the entertainment side rather than the content side, and that's okay. And then after that, you have somebody that maybe isn't so high energy, but he's got a really, his message is really something that makes us think, or makes us bring down that kind of fun idea, because it might be something more serious, or something that makes us reflect a little bit more. So putting those two together, and that's actually one of the skills of an event organizer, the content creator, making sure that who you're putting next to each other is actually flows well. You might want to put actually the differences and the big contrasts, and if you can trust the MC in between to join those together, then that's great. Or if maybe you haven't hired an MC who has proved that he or she can do that, and it's just about the energy, maybe it's a question of, you know, putting the first block or the first 2 blocks of the day, or even the first day, that kind of energy, high, strong, fun, you know, great. And then the second day, more reflective, perhaps more of a subdued feel, and people can sort of connect and engage a little bit more. So it all depends on what the event organizer is looking for. But really your job, as an MC is to keep things flowing and help people get ready for what's coming, make sense of what they've heard, and feel good and feel positive in all of this. Yeah,
it really is about that, managing that energy, as you said, which can happen through the way that the speakers have been, the agenda, and mapping that out. What I find about emceeing as well, you think, oh, the MC just comes up for like 2 minutes between each spot, but a lot of the work's being done as you sit down. Back to that point about listening, is you're listening for the speaker and what they're saying, so you can bring that point in. Some of the, like, I've been to some conferences where the MCs just come up and said, "Thank you. Now, next speaker." And I'm like, no, you just, like, you're not doing a job. Like, anyone can do that.
I have been to many events like that where there's "thank you very much," and next is, or even a speaker, right? They've thought, right, we're not even going to spend a budget on an MC. We don't need one. Why should we have one? And they tell the speaker at the end to introduce the next person. Yeah, so do you know what I mean? So you can imagine, you've just done a speech or a facilitation or your work, and you've shared that, and at the end of it, at that moment where you've maybe shared a call to action, or, you know, that feeling where you've really made that connection, and that's the moment where people remember you, and then suddenly you have to then get people ready for someone else. It's, you know, it's but they're all shapes and sizes.
It is, yeah. And I guess, look, this is all character building. And look, I'm sure I've been that MC that's just done that just is like, thank you, and moved on. You know, we all have to go through the baptism of fire and unlearn skills and habits. So in terms of your energy and getting ready for a speech yourself, like, how do you prepare? Do you go for a run? Do you meditate? Like, what's your routine look like?
No, I don't go for a run. I think a lot. I kind of think and try to visualize what's going to happen. How's this going to unfold? And that actually process is done way before. Once, you know, as soon as I know that even before I've got the job, to be fair. So when I'm, you know, connecting with certain various event organizers, or they've reached out to me, the first thing I'll do is really trying to get a feel and a sense of what this event is. Who is it for? What's the energy? Let me see the photographs. Let me see the videos. If I can see a video on YouTube that gives a kind of a teaser video or an overview of past events, that really gives me a sense of everything, really. So once I've seen that and seen the website and seen the speakers, past speakers, that tells me, okay, what am I dealing with here? And then hopefully I'll kind of get into the right frame of mind, the mood. Hitting the right mood is really is so important, as you know, right? So really understanding what that audience is used to and what that audience expects. And also, if I was to change it up, if I was to kind of mix it up slightly, how would they react to that? Right. So my I would say, if I was to try to describe the kind of host or MC that I am, or that I've done, you know, the work I've done in the past, I would say quite energetic, not really energetic, quite energetic, positive, letting that spontaneity come in as well. I'm not a comedian at all. I think I can be funny sometimes.
Neither am I.
We all think we're funny.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to look at myself and know that I'm not funny. so looking at myself and not taking myself too seriously, but at the same time professional, and all those adjectives that would describe somebody who can take care of a large stage on a big annual conference, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So I already know that, and the more we know ourselves, the more we know what we've done in the past, and that gives us a kind of idea of what we can do in the future, and whether that fits well with certain events. So sometimes, if it's an event, maybe in the past when I started to do let's say fintech events, or cryptocurrency events, or events that are really towards the financial side of things, which is not an area that I'm fully I wouldn't say comfortable with, but it's not something that it's not a big part of my interest, let's say. However, the skills and the energy and the tone, for whatever audience, I can still do that.
Yeah.
And it's really, again, what are they expecting? Are they expecting an MC? Are they expecting the host to have a really high knowledge of the topic, really somebody who's within the industry? So again, sometimes an event organizer will want that. They specifically want somebody who has a background, let's say, in finance, years of experience of really understanding the ins and outs, and where that industry is going in the future. And they may want that. But the thing with that is, often industry experts they don't maybe have the skills to manage a stage, to get people to listen to them, to help people understand things better in a simple, effective way. You see what I mean? So finding the two, often if you can find somebody that is really a good, really has the knowledge, together with those stage skills or interacting and engagement skills, then you're on the right path. But again, it all depends what your audience is about. But going back to answering the question, how do I prepare? Yeah, a lot of it is thoughts, getting the process beforehand, the night before. So everything that I drink before, so the fluid that I drink before, fluid, as if it's like it's water, it's nothing else. It's not alcohol.
Tasting as if I'm talking the fluid, the elixir. It is the elixir.
So, it's mine's water. It is water, not whiskey, but it is water. So I actually don't drink alcohol anyway, but what I drink the day before, I've always found that it really helps the day after.
Definitely.
It's like, and on the morning, sips of water, that really helps. And just feeling good. Because if I'm not feeling good for whatever reason, or if there's any distraction, I have to then balance myself again and get into that frame of mind, into that mode, into that good zone that is going to help people engage with me. So if I fly in, that's a really good point as well. So flying in last year before,
mega hydrate.
I need to make sure that if I am going to arrive late, and so I work out, I can, often been to the same cities before, but if it's a new city, I have to work out how long it's going to actually take before I get into my bed and have that good night's sleep before I wake up early in the morning, because it is always often an early morning wake up. Good breakfast, feeling good, having everything prepared beforehand. The flight over, that's really good time, isn't it? It's really good kind of thinking time. I've always used that as thinking time.
Love it. Yeah.
And that time there is a really good time because you can't do anything else. You're just stuck on sitting in a seat. So using that time to really think and visualize and really get everything right. So trying to make sure that you've got enough time, especially if you arrive late, to get that good night's sleep and be prepared mentally and physically.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the physicality and getting a good night's sleep, mega hydrating as well. Hopefully not too much in the day, so you're running to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Peter, speaking of time, our time is up today. It's been wonderful chatting to you and hearing about, I mean, this middle space between speaking and facilitating. And I love that we, as facilitators, have those transferable skills that we can bring into something like hosting and moderating, like yourself. If our listeners want to find out more about what you do and get coached on moderating or speaking virtually, where should we send them?
Well, really simply, just straight to my LinkedIn profile, Peter Hopwood, public speaking coach, TEDx coach, virtual speaking specialist. You can see everything that I've been doing, I'm doing right now, and what I'm going to do in the future as well. Really hot right now, really passionate. Some people might think I'm maybe too passionate about virtual speaking, but I really am. I really see it as something that can really help us. And if we get really, really good at it in many, many different ways, that can only help us when we start to go back. So if your team or your leader or someone in your network, you feel that maybe they need to kind of brush up on really getting good at virtual speaking and presence, reach out and let's see where we can collaborate.
Amazing. And we'll put a link to Peter's LinkedIn profile in the show notes for this one. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your tips today. It's been awesome connecting with you live. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Well done. Great job.